Our next speaker is one such. Please put your hands together for Greishma Singh, Vice President, Customer and Commercial Leadership at Coca-Cola India and Southwest Asia, to the stage, please.
Good afternoon. For the record, I think Amit danced pretty well in his defense. But good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time. I have been told that the best presentations are the short ones. So, as Elizabeth Taylor said to all 8 of her husbands, I will not be keeping you very long. Okay? So, my name is Greishma Singh, and as he said, I lead the customer and commercial function at the Coca-Cola company in India. And some of you would be very right to be going, why? Why is she here? Why am I here? And why should you listen to me? Some of the best communications minds in the country, in the room. I definitely won't communicate as well as you. Why should you be listening to me? And I will answer that question, but before I do, I will ask a question of my own to you. And that is, when you think about your interactions with the companies you work in or the companies that you work with, how many of you identify with the dude holding this poster? Sometimes, once in a while, you do? And the reason I ask this is because I believe that public relations and broadly communication is a very strategic function. It is a business partner. And it irks me a little bit when you hear more often HR being referred to as a business partner, marketing being referred to as a business partner, finance definitely being referred to as a business partner, and we heard it through the panels this morning as well. PR and communications, not often enough, gets referred to as a primary business partner. And the reason I think this is a bit strange is because PR is not only a strategic function, it is what I like to call an octopus function. It has its tentacles spread broad and wide across the organization. You look at new market expansion, policy, marketing, crisis resolution, stakeholder engagement, investor relations. PR and communication has a natural and strategic role to play across all of these areas. The part of the business that I work in is about 10%, and I know personally, I definitely bring in the PR and communication function as a business partner always, thanks to its strategic role. So, that brings us back to why I'm here. I've been with Coke for a wonderful 13 years plus, and in that time I've had the pleasure of working across Australia and India, 2 very different markets, roles across marketing, strategy, and now the customer and commercial function. But I started my career the best possible way in the associate learning program at Genesis Person Mastella. Woo-hoo! Yeah, any ALPs in the room, please do give it up. And so currently my merry team and I, we do sales strategy. So that is, which packs, which products, how do they get to the shelf, and how much do we sell them for. We also manage the top 60 customers for our business. So the relationships with all of those customers are managed by me and my team. And we are business partners to those customers. And boy, oh boy, is it difficult. And it is a learning journey. You learn something every day partnering with customers. And I thought what might be useful is for me today to share some of my learnings and tips with you, what I have learned on how to partner with these customers every day so that you are always at the table, and dare I say, so that you are always invited to the party. Okay, my first tip is get to know your mother-in-law. Get to know your mother-in-law. Yes, you heard me right, get to know your mother-in-law. When you get married and you enter a new home, the mother-in-law is the most intimidating character. Very scary, knows it all, crusty exterior. If you get past it though, it is well worth it. Now obviously I'm not giving you life advice and telling you to get to know your real mother-in-law, you probably should. I am talking about the metaphorical mother-in-law of business, the P&L. Get to know it. It is very scary, it is very intimidating, But much like if you understand your mother-in-law and the cogs that are behind everything going on in her head, you will understand your husband. Same way, you understand the P&L and the cogs below every single line, you will understand the business. So take the time. Financial literacy and understanding of the P&L is the entry pass to the majority of business conversations happening. Any conversation on any floor of the business you operate on, you take the time to think about it and you can usually link it to a line in the P&L. But to me, the best bit in a P&L isn't actually the lines. The really yummy, crunchy bits are sitting underneath the lines. It is the equations and the algorithms, the levers, sitting underneath each line of the P&L. And where I discovered this was actually from one of the best PR and comms professionals I've seen in action. She was leading PR and comms, and I at the time was doing business reporting and intelligence for the unit. And she called me into her office and she said, hey, can you spend a couple of hours with me? I want to go through every single line of the P&L and understand the numbers, and I'll ask you lots of questions. And I thought, oh, this is going to be short, it'll be a half-an-hour conversation, she'll get bored. Oh, no. It was 3.5 hours plus of conversation. And she asked the most wonderful questions. She really got into it. Okay, this revenue is growing more than volume. What is it that is driving that leverage? Is it pack mix? Is it product mix? Is it channel mix? How do you influence that? Okay, this is a sales revenue number. What is driving that? Is it more shoppers? Is it that they're putting more into their baskets? Is it that they are paying more for it? And she got really into the equations that drove every line of the P&L, and I realized then that that is a very, very powerful thing to do, because if you look closely enough, these mechanics help to explain why businesses answer two fundamental questions the way they do: where to play and how to win. And the decisions that they are making on where to play and how to win are inherently linked to these elements of the P&L. So get to know them. And just a fast tip, the best way to just start this off is actually to log in and listen to investor calls. So if you work for a listed company, listen to your own. If you don't, find other listed companies in the sector. It's a great way to roll around in the vocabulary of the P&L and understand the questions that the market raises about the sector you're in. All right, so that's my first one. Know your mother-in-law, know your P&L. For my second one, I'd like to just tell you a story. So when I was growing up, I used to read Tinkle comics. Did anyone else read the Tinkle? Yeah, we're all showing our age now. Yeah, Tinkle comics. So this is a story from the Tinkle comics. So there was a little kid, and he'd go to school every day, and the boys from the class above him, they would play a game with him. They would trick him. They would put these two coins in front of him, a 25 paisa coin, a 20 paisa coin, and they'd say, pick one. You can pick whichever one you want, you can have it. And every day that kid would look at these two and go, ooh, this one looks bigger. And he'd pick the bigger one, which is the 20 paisa coin. And the bigger boys would laugh and say, look at him, he has picked the wrong coin. And every day he would do this, and his friend was watching him do it. And eventually that friend felt bad for me. He said, look, I know you are smarter than this. Why are you doing this? Why every day you're picking the wrong coin. Why are you doing it? And he said to him, the kid said to his friend, I know that the 25 paisa coin is bigger. I also know that the day I pick that smaller 25 paisa coin, they will stop playing the game with me. And the reason I tell you this story is because understanding the big picture is critical. This kid understood the big picture. And understanding that big picture is at the core of good storytelling and capturing the business narrative. And the big picture in any business is actually captured through the 3 C's. So they're nice and easy, convenient to remember: consumer, customer, and competitor. So if you look at most really successful companies, definitely in the FMCG space, which is my happy place, a lot of them are consumer-centric. All of the successful ones are consumer-centric. They are obsessed with that end buyer. That lady who is buying the toothbrush, the family that is using all the toothbrushes she buys, what need states, what time of day, what occasion, all of that consumer centricity. you look closer and a lot of the companies will add one other element to consumer centricity. They will usually say consumer centric and customer back. And what that means is you not only have to care about that lady who has bought the toothbrush, you also have to care about the kirana shop that she bought it from. What is that kirana shop owner thinking about? What are his margin expectations? How often does he need to be serviced? Does he buy on EB2B today, or is he still waiting for the salesman to come? Beyond him, in the soft drinks business, if you look at it, it's not even just him. That little chotu in the shop, he's the guy who's deciding which drink goes in the fridge. So you also have to know what matters to that guy. How is he making his choices? So understanding your consumer and customer is absolutely critical to any business. And there are no two ways about it. The best way to do this is to immerse yourself in it physically. And I mean this even for online businesses. Some of the best market visits I've done in my life have actually been online market visits. You give yourself a challenge. You're a mother of 3, there's a birthday party next week, you only have this much money, go online and buy what you want from Big Basket. What do? You know, put yourself in the positions that your consumer and customer are in. Force yourself to be immersed really. And some of us do this tick in the box. I've also done it in the past. Did you go for market visit? Yes. I went for 20 minutes, I stood there, I came back. That's not real. Making it a routine is how the best people do it. Certain number of days a quarter, always done, a certain number of times a year, and at the right depth. So consumer, customer. The third one actually I think is critical and an area where PR and comms in particular can play a very large role, and that's competitor, okay? Most companies I think face a shortage of time. It's not money, it's actually time that is the resource that they're struggling with. And sometimes that lack of time means internal focus, a lack of time to look outside, what are competitors doing, what's going on. And PR and comms is in a great place to be able to help with that. And if you're just the PR and comms team, you give the tracking. This is where, you know, your competitors featured. But if you are a business partner, then you take that tracking, that external awareness, and take that next step to say, hey, they've been doing these 3 things, so it's likely they will either do this or this in the future, and are we actually having scenario planning conversations around that? And suddenly, you've got a seat at the table in the strategy room, which is the main room. So the 3 C's, consumer, competitor, and customer. All right. My third point, I will start with this quote from the great Mark Twain. I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead. There is a massive power for simplicity and the ability to make things simple in any business. So for me, the most powerful business partners, or in fact anyone in a business, is the person who can make the complex simple and the simple compelling. And I think PR and communications is well placed to be this role, this person that makes it really simple and easy to understand, particularly in the space of the regulatory environment. And every single company faces the regulatory environment, their own particular laws, taxes, etc., legislature that they are open to. Many of the panels this morning talked about it as well. And the PR and comms function is well placed to be the one that simplifies, demystifies, connects the dots and says, hey, if we're going to react to this, firstly, should we? And if we do, how many functions in the business will be impacted? How should they all connect together? And that role of the Sutradhar is an extremely powerful one, and there on the table for the taking. Again, an invite to the party up front to actually set the strategy for any business that you're participating in. All right, so we've gotten to know our mother-in-law. We're loving the consumer, the customer, and the competitor, and we're being a Sutradhar. My fourth point, if you'll indulge me, I'll tell you a little story to kind of get us into this one. There was a school reunion, okay? And all the kids were back. They weren't kids anymore, all grown up now. And one of the professors was in the side of the room. And one of the men in the room went up to him and said, sir, do you remember me? And he said, no, but I don't remember you. He said, but I was in your class, sir, and I remember you because you made a real impact on my life. And he said, oh, okay. He said, you know, you had done something when I was in quite a junior class. There was a watch left in the classroom and one of the boys took it. And when we all came back from break, you realized that this watch was gone. And you lined us all up and you said, you know, I know one of you has taken it. I understand these things can be tempting. It's difficult. So we're going to give you a safe space to give this watch back. We're all going to close our eyes because we understand what this is like. And whoever took the watch, just come and put it in the desk in the front. And he said, it was me that took the watch. And I really, the way you treated it with such kindness, you understood what I was going through, really changed my life from that time on. And I realized I shouldn't do wrong things. And I thought you'd remember me because it was quite an important thing and you saw me put that watch back. And he said, but I don't remember you because I also had my eyes closed. And this is a story about empathy. It is a story about truly understanding where someone is coming from and having empathy. And the reason I raise empathy is because actually some of the topics that were covered in the last session on, you know, the volatility around the world, you can choose whichever acronym you like. You prefer VUCA, that is always there. It's been a favorite since the 80s. Barney, I believe, is the new kid on the block. We are now brittle and anxious and non-linear and incomprehensible. So whichever acronym you choose, there is a lot of uncertainty and volatility in the world around us. I moved from Australia, where I was working for many years, to India in December 2020. Husband, 8-year-old, 9-month-old in tow. And since then, there's been a second wave. We got close to a world war, supply chain shortages, hyperinflation, now we're talking about stagflation. And this is all in a year and a half. That is a lot, it's a lot. And during that entire time, all this stuff goes on, but none of the delivery metrics drop. Companies are still expected to grow top line, to grow margin, to grow share. There is an immense amount of pressure that you and your business partners are going through. And sometimes, all you need to do is actually have empathy for what all of that change means. And that can be the soft side to accompany all of the hardware to make you a business partner of choice with any customer. This uncertainty requires empathy. It also requires, honestly, a change in the linear way we think about planning. I'll go to my customer world, this whole thing of we do JBP, joint business planning, one time a year. Annual business planning one time a year, long range plan where we talk about 3 years. These are all very antiquated concepts. You can do that, but you're also going to have to look at scenarios every 3 months because the inflation you thought would happen, it's doubled or it hasn't happened and you suddenly have to think differently. So yes, the rhythmic nature of planning, but also scenario planning. Also conversations around what will trigger you to make certain decisions, and again that role of the Sutradhar to say if this decision gets taken, who will have to take what action. And now finally, and thank you for indulging me all along, my final tip is actually a simple one, which is not to forget the puzzle even as you perfect a single piece. And I learned this because, as I said, I've had the really unique privilege of getting to do lots of different roles. And early on, I was in marketing. I was convinced marketing was all I was ever going to do. I loved it. And then things changed around. Someone said, hey, do you want to try reporting and business intelligence? I was like, sounds horrifying and scary. No. But then I gave it a go. I tried it. And suddenly, I went from loving this one piece of the puzzle, marketing. It was my piece. It was really fun. To seeing the broader puzzle. Suddenly I saw there are more metrics, this one influences that one, these two connect together, and this is the kind of picture we're trying to paint to stakeholders. This is what we're telling the company, this is what we're telling outside. And after that, I've again moved into other functions, and every time you look at this puzzle from a different perspective, you get a richer understanding and you get a whole new set of questions that you go into any situation wanting to ask. Now, I'm not saying you all wake up on Monday morning and say, let's try another function. It can be a bit, stressful. Luckily, you don't actually have to go try another function to do this, to get perspective on different parts of the puzzle. It can be done quite easily by expanding your footprint into the organization and the conversations you have and with who. How many of us actually take the time to go, I'll pick the scary one, legal. How many people go have a lunch with legal once in a while and go, hey, what happens in your part of the business? You know, when you're not telling me what I can't do, what else do you do? And you know, what influences your world? Similarly, finance, other functions, do we take the time to actually go have conversations with them and understand their particular piece of the puzzle? So if you are part of an organization in the communications and PR function, it's how often do you branch out of your department and have lunch? If you are in an agency, it is honestly, do you hold your client accountable for doing this for you? Because you should. You should be telling them, hey, love spending time with you, but your perspective cannot be my only perspective on your organization. You have to bring me into a broader set of conversations so that I can do everything that I'm capable of doing for your business. So, love your piece of the puzzle, but remember the broader puzzle as a whole. So those are my 5, and I would urge you to broaden your footprint. Go forth into the organization, pull your chair up to every single table, go to the party dressed to impress, hang out with that mother-in-law, because when PR and comms and every business partner actually comes to the table and all those voices are there, the stakeholder, the consumer, the customer, the competitor, the investor, all of it comes together, that's when not only do you win, the organization wins, the category wins, and business as a whole wins. Thank you for your time.
Let's invite Mukesh Kharbanda, Managing Director of Fuzion PR.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Greishma, for letting me have this conversation with you. I think one takeaway that I can take, though we are talking about rethinking measurement and talking about storytelling in different forms, somewhere the core narrative of us knowing P&L is drowning. So thank you for bringing that up today. But let me start with one question. You talked about P&L on the whole. Do you think even with ecosystem of startups coming into India, do you think that still holds true? Don't you think comms and PR people are being included in the room and they are part of the decision-making process right now?
So I think the startup environment is definitely shaping every single sector in India. And for me, actually, a lot of the things we were talking about in terms of broadening your footprint and all of that is slightly easier done in a startup, because it's faster, it's a smaller set of people, you can kind of get around it a bit easier potentially. The one thing I think is actually interesting from a P&L perspective is if you look at the startup curve and trajectory sometimes, the cool thing to watch out with startups is actually their P&L priorities are changing over time versus larger, mature companies. So you actually have to be even more involved and more agile in how closely you are working on that, because one day you are telling a revenue and share story and it's all about go, add as much as you can, capture market. Suddenly, a week later, you're getting closer to an IPO and you need to be showing unit economics, and now suddenly everything you have to communicate is about how you're going to drive the unit economics. So in fact, in the startup space, I would say because of how fast changing it is, you have to be even more tuned in to the P&L and the changing priorities of that P&L given the external environment and what that company is going for.
Greishma, taking view from the answer that you've given, do you think there is a stage and phase for an organization starting up to being an organization like a Coke? Do you see a phase specifically where people are more open to including comms people into the room?
Honestly, no. I think that people are usually open to adding anyone into the room who adds value and who listens. I think these are the two core things, and that's why I'm saying, like, it really isn't, I think sometimes we externalize the locus of control and we shouldn't. If you're not invited, invite yourself or make yourself so valuable that the next time the person regrets not inviting you. So I think sometimes we wait, you're like trying to get on a rocket ship and you're waiting for a boarding pass. Just get on it. like, and find a way around. Because I think if you add value, you listen, you're that person that strings together the meeting, you bring in an interesting point of view, you've got external orientation, you get the business, why will someone not invite you?
That's a great answer. I think we have a lot of youngsters in the room. Would you have a list of skill sets or any courses that you would recommend for people to ace being a business partner in the near future?
Do I have a list handy? No. Let me think. I'll come back to the first one.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but can it be anything to do with understanding how the business works? Because
Yeah,
most of the youngsters, and especially we being the agencies also, we focus only on the communication and the PR part of it.
Right.
We hardly get to the business part. Maybe that can be a start or something else.
100%, 100%. So I'd say probably two things would be on my list of skills, and I don't think it's relevant to youngsters as you call them, but it's actually relevant throughout, because you have to keep updating skills. The two that actually I'd put three on my list. Number one would be the old mother-in-law, the P&L. Like, take a finance course, take a finance person out for lunch, understand that and keep understanding it, because there's always one more layer to understand. The other one I would say is storytelling and perfecting storytelling. You're all well on your way to mastery, but I think whatever skill is your lead one, you have to keep refreshing it, improving it, moving to the next level, because that's your thing. And the third, I would say, as much as it's a buzzword that has a lot of complexities, is actually digital. Understanding how digital in all its various forms, is impacting the businesses you're interested in is something you should stay on top of upskilling, because it's kind of this invisible mesh that is running through every business, shaping things.
And considering, Greishma, and now that we are talking about skill sets, and you have a vast experience working across domains of communication, covering marketing as well, do you think when freshers join agencies or Corpcom teams, what are the skill sets that they are lacking currently? And the skill set that you think organizations like SCORE probably need to focus on?
I don't think they're lacking a lot. I think they're actually set up to succeed. Like when I ran into, after doing the program at Genesis, I went and ran my own business for a while and then went to B school. And I found like some of the skills I learned in that first job, the storytelling, frankly, the ability to shut up and listen, like listen to a client properly in order to just understand what they are saying and be able to play it back in a compelling manner that connects three things. I actually don't think they're missing anything. I think they must be aware of how special it is to be able to start in PR, because it teaches you some skills that they're a Swiss Army knife. You can pull them out in multiple situations and they'll be very relevant for a career in multiple spaces.
That, I think, are encouraging words for every youngster sitting in the room. Taking forward the business partnership that you focused on in your presentation, especially post-COVID, there have been a lot of changes in the comm space as well. Do you think there are certain elements wherein agencies and communication teams in India have aced post-COVID times, and there are certain parameters where we are still lacking and we need to focus on to be the business partners in true sense of the word for our clients?
I think the whole COVID situation, it took away a lot of like the barriers and rules and invisible things that got in the way, on multiple fronts. Like you can't work from home, suddenly you could work from home. Only these people do this. Suddenly when, many people were out of the business, everyone did everything. So it kind of broke down a lot of the things that have gotten in the way of collaboration in the past. And I think especially PR and comms got a much like that. If you go back to that octopus analogy, the tentacles were allowed a little bit more free rein, internal communications, heading task forces within the organization, agile teams were put in, suddenly PR and comms teams were, in places they hadn't been before. So I actually think probably the biggest challenge is how do you make sure as the world returns to whatever new form of normal that we find, you don't shrink your tentacles back and get in a box, you keep some of that flex that the situation kind of afforded.
And do you think, considering you have a wider horizon of how communication works across the world, do you think the way Indian ecosystem has adjusted to COVID norms is different from anywhere else in the world, or has it been the same also everywhere?
And that one's really hard to answer, honestly, in terms of how, because I think COVID had such different impacts on every sector, every economy, every person. I think that there wasn't one uniform reaction per se. The only thing uniform was the disruption that it kind of caused across businesses.
Let me ask you a question on your personal journey. Since it's been 14 years and you've worked in marketing, comms, and you must have coordinated a lot with advertising as well. Which one of these has been your favorite and why? A lot of youngsters are listening to you, please.
My
Please,
God, who are these
comms
scary
should be the
youngsters?
favorite.
Where are all these scary youngsters in the audience? To all the youngsters.
No, I was saying comms has to be the favorite. So you
Does
should
it?
just
All right,
answer
no.
why.
I actually don't have a favorite because I think the thing I've realized over the years going through various functions is we make more of a big deal of the differences than we should. There are certain things in every function that you add on that is specific knowledge, but those core business understanding questions, the core value additive questions, particularly in the three that you are talking about, are actually quite similar. So to me it's like one Rubik's Cube and you're looking at it from various angles. So I love all three because I like getting to the bottom of consumers, what they're after, and then getting different parts of a business mobilized to solve that problem. And all three of those functions do that.
Greishma, do you think this is the similar view the C-suite of organizations also has?
Yes, I think that actually C-suites are increasingly talking about, I mean, I've not been in a million different C-suites, so I'm just telling you like off the top of my head. I think the traditional ladder perception of careers, which is like you pick one ladder and then you go 1 and 2 and 3, is kind of changing, and there's now like a monkey bar approach. You know, you kind of swing this way to that way, you learn along the way, and as long as you're kind of growing and developing along the way, there's a lot of respect and regard for diversity, not just in terms of women, but diversity of thought. And the best way to generate diversity of thought is actually cross-functional experience.
That's a great answer. In terms of customers, you mentioned in your presentation, one of your slides, do you think in India specifically, consumers residing in metros and consumers residing beyond metros, do they have a different way of imbibing stuff, different way of communication that they adapt to or imbibe?
I mean, yeah, I think that there isn't one India, there isn't one Chandigarh, there isn't one Gurgaon. Like the need to understand granularity is just next level here. And if you want to capture the growth, you have to really embrace that. And you know, one of the things we talked about is also like the role that language plays in that. And how you use language, specific execution, the right strategy, and the right micro strategy to be actually able to capture the difference in language, in socioeconomic, in preference at every, you know, mile or two. Is definitely, there are differences between urban and rural, there's differences within rural, one street to another. So I think it's, yes. Absolutely, you have to capture.
Great. I think we have only a couple of minutes. So last question, considering I represent the regional PR or regional communication domain in India, in languages, and recently we've launched a booklet on languages and dialects. Do you think language communication, though you've touched upon it, plays an even bigger role now because everybody, even in villages, even in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns are on internet and accessing information on their phones. So language content, how do you see it playing role in the next 5 years, 10 years down the line?
I mean, I think that if you look at the mobile penetration, the internet penetration, you know, digital payments 3 times what China, all of it shows you that there is a lot of scope there, and anyone who has the content ready, the channels are open for them to push it through. Language plays a really key role. You go into the smallest hinterland village, you will be in the one shop in the village and you will be surrounded by 30 QR codes. Now it's up to your organization whether they have a QR code and they have something cool to put behind that QR code. So I think the opportunity is there, it's just who can be relevant and have something that engages the consumer.
Perfect, that's it from me. I think it was a great, engaging yet very funny presentation. So thank you for taking out time.
Thank you, thanks a lot.